I went downstairs still in my pajamas and headed to the kitchen. My parents were already sitting at the table, calmly drinking their morning coffee, while I poured myself some milk and cereal. Another dead animal has appeared in the forest. This time a dog, Dad explained calmly. He squinted at me from behind his newspaper. In the clearing in the forest on the outskirts, do you realize? I nodded without saying a word, since I couldn't do more with my mouth full. Those events had been happening for several months. Animal corpses appeared in the forest almost weekly. At first, they were just rabbits and other smaller animals. However, in recent days, the victims have changed. Whatever was hunting the animals had moved on to larger prey. Still, no one knew what was happening in the forest. People had already begun to rumor the existence of a monster. My father wrinkled his nose slightly as his eyes landed on the milk carton. He quickly looked back at the newspaper. It had been several weeks since my father hadn't looked directly at me. I don't want to say that he was angry with me. I was his daughter and he loved me. We still watched movies together on TV and occasionally played board games with Mom, but I no longer felt the same connection. And it was all since I confessed that I was a lesbian. For a man as conservative as him, it had been a great shock. I imagine it was just a phase and that he needed more time to assimilate that I wasn't someone else after telling him that I like girls. My mother, however, didn't take it badly at all. For me, it was a great pillar in the acceptance of my orientation. My eyes fell on the clock. I had plans and it was late. I shoveled 2 more spoonfuls of cereal into my mouth. Then I ran into the hallway. My mother caught up with me while I was tying my shoes. She smiled at me and told me she loved me. "I love you too, Mom," I told her, and then I ran away. I didn't want to be late for today's appointment, but the next obstacle was waiting for me at the door. Our neighbor. She was one of those typical gossips. She knew everything there was in town and often spoke so fast that it was hard to follow her constant changes of topic. Apparently, she had just picked up the newspaper, although I had the feeling that she had been waiting for me. "Did you know they found another dead dog? Bertha said that not even her husband could say which animal killed the poor guy. And he's a doctor. They say it was completely dismembered. He had never seen anything like that." And then I thought, what if there is a monster lurking in our forest? Definitely, sooner or later, we humans will also be the victims. "Good morning, Mrs. Collins." I heard my mother's voice behind me. She had heard our neighbor's voice and came to help me. Mrs. Collins' attention shifted immediately. "Oh dear, we haven't seen each other lately." And she immediately attacked my mother. She was like a vulture jumping on a dead animal. A very unfriendly vulture with no sense of tact or courtesy. "I've been wanting to talk to you about your lawn for a while. Is your lawnmower broken? The garden doesn't look good at all." I stopped listening to her. After quickly turning to my mother to whisper a quiet, "Thank you," I continued on my way. Bea and Frank were already waiting for me. "Finally, here you are. We thought you were getting cold feet. The rest are already waiting in the forest," said Bea. I glanced at the trees at the end of the path and we prepared to meet the rest of the group. We were all botany students. We loved to delve into the world of new plants to study their composition and development. Some time ago, one of my classmates had found an amazing plant deep in the forest. My parents had warned me on several occasions not to go near there because of the mysterious animal deaths. Maybe there were wolves or bears and it could be dangerous. Of course, I didn't pay attention to them. I didn't want to be scared in front of my companions. I had managed to make friends, so when that little group invited me to do the research with them, I didn't hesitate. It was a great opportunity for me. Would I finally have friends? Soon, fears about the attack of a possible beast were receding. The forest was very quiet. A soft wind caressed the leaves. In the distance, a woodpecker was tapping on a tree. From time to time, I could even hear the hum of insects, which little by little announced the arrival of spring. I could smell the soft aroma of moist earth. What a fabulous place! And just a few minutes from the noisy center. The forest was very large, so we marked some ties on the trees, since the path we had taken was not marked nor was there any trail. That way, we wouldn't risk getting lost. Suddenly, Frank stopped in front of me. Almost automatically, he knelt and raised a finger towards the rest. Then there was rustling in the undergrowth some distance away. I immediately turned in that direction, but apart from the shaking branches, I couldn't see anything. "I think I saw someone. Someone or something?" asked another of the girls, Susan. The young man replied that he had thought he saw a man. We stayed there in silence for a while. I first looked in the direction where the crunching sound was coming from and then looked at Frank. His eyes scanned the forest as if he expected to find a man somewhere. But then his expression changed, and he encouraged the group to continue on the route. After walking for about 2 hours, we had reached the clearing where the plant we were going to analyze was located. There was a large oak tree there. Its branches extended in all directions. But our attention was not on the tree, but on a smelly pile at its feet. In the distance, you could hear the buzzing of flies. And it got even louder as we got closer. The smell of decomposition quickly became so intense that I raised the sleeve of my jacket to my nose. Curious, we approached the dead animal. When we stood in front of him, I had to make a great effort to keep from vomiting. I had seen quite a few deer in my life, even dead ones, but I could barely identify what was before us as such. His body was completely destroyed. His intestines had been torn out and there were pieces of organs and blood all over the floor. I shuddered thinking about what that beast could do to us if it caught us. Suddenly, I felt like I was being watched. I quickly turned around, but I didn't see anyone. Then my eyes continued to wander. But far and wide, there were only trees. Finally, my eyes landed on the trunk of the great oak tree. Directly in front of me, about 2 meters high, there was a mark on the bark that I couldn't understand, made of blood. That mark had not been a random stain, but had been made intentionally. What if that beast was a mud hunter? A little later, we were sitting away from the smell, analyzing the plants we had found. I looked up confused. The sun's rays were no longer so strong. Several hours had passed without us realizing it. We were discussing various hypotheses when suddenly a scream came through the forest. It was loud, but it didn't look like any animal I knew, not even a human. I looked around for the source of the sound. One of the boys claimed it was a fox. Unfortunately, I had to destroy his illusion. It was not a fox. I had never heard an animal like that. I looked at the ground looking for some clue, and near a patch of mud, I discovered a footprint, a human footprint, and it looked fresh. The mud hunter hypothesis was no longer so far-fetched. Frightened by the situation, I began to write in my notebook everything we had done that day, step by step. I hoped that if they did something to me and found my body lying in the woods, my words would help them understand what exactly had happened to me. I began by describing our excursion to the forest to collect new plant specimens and further study their composition. I also mentioned the markers on the trees for a safe return home when I had to return. Everything seemed to be going fairly well. However, when the sky began to darken, my day took an unexpected turn. Maybe I was naive, because having friends was never my strong suit, and I had foolishly gotten my hopes up thinking that I had finally fit in with someone in class. But not. When they got me to help them with all the study of the new plants and all my findings, they stopped being interested in me. They had used me. They had only spoken to me and invited me because of my knowledge of botany. It was as if they became other people. They forced me to lie on the ground while everyone laughed, and the only thing I could do was cry, curled up in the dirt. They made fun of me for being the best student, calling me a brainiac, a weirdo, and then they also picked on me for my sexual orientation. Why were they so cruel to me? I thought we all loved botany and respected each other as colleagues. But one of them grabbed me by the hair and proceeded to hit my head over and over again with a branch until I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I didn't really remember what had happened. The only thing I had left was this notebook with my notes. I needed to find my way home. The boughs on the trees were missing. They had been removed on purpose, and I didn't know how to go back. My head had scabs covered in blood. My face was tender and sore. My glasses broken. No phone, no way home. I needed to survive, to escape somehow. 48 hours had passed and I was starving. Fortunately, being surrounded by lush plant life, I was able to decipher what was edible and what was not. The berries and mushrooms helped me maintain some of my energy. I walked and walked until I came to a small freshwater stream. It was my salvation. My headache had not stopped. It even seemed to get worse by the moment. They had beaten me very hard in it. I desperately needed help. Getting out alive was the only thing in my mind. I wondered if my parents were thinking about me. This diary could be the only thing they have left of their daughter when they find me. I didn't want to make them suffer. I just wanted to find my way home and get revenge on those who had hurt me so much. Time continued to pass and I had already been lost for 72 hours. I felt that instead of getting closer to the town, I was going deeper and deeper into the forest. It was endless. My hopes and desire to lie down in a warm bed were lost. The food I found didn't give me enough energy to keep going. Something was watching me every day. I could feel it. I wasn't alone. Or was I losing my mind? I didn't know it was real anymore. That forest was driving me crazy. When I felt the end was reaching me, I could see him. He was standing in the distance while I was too weak to move. No face, long body. He was abnormally thin, much thinner than a person should be. He didn't have hair either. The more I looked at him, the more unsure I was whether the thing was really human. When the neighbor mentioned the existence of a monster in the forest, I never thought there was a real monster. I assumed it was a wolf, but that? It must have been some kind of marriage of my unstable mind. I had been crying uncontrollably all those days. Then I closed my eyes. I hoped that if someone read my note, he would tell my family that I loved them, and that I was very sorry for having caused them that suffering. That night there was a full moon, casting its light over the forest floor. Jennifer's figure lit up and she caught the hungry eyes of a black bear. She crawled up a tree after being alerted by the sound of the animal snorting and growling. The mammal was almost face to face with the young woman. Jennifer tried to move in the direction of the bear, causing the animal to dig its claws deep into her. Blood began to gush from the limb as she let out a scream, knowing that this was how she would die. Maybe this would be her release from the horrible torture of being trapped in the trees for days. Suddenly, silence came and her vision became blurry. Headaches resonated deep in her skull. The young woman curled up in a fetal position as her nails dug deep into her skull, causing the skin to tear and blood to drip down to her chin. And he appeared again. The tall man was there, and in an instant, with the help of some large tentacles, the bear's body was separated in half. Blood splattered on the creature and herself as the animal's carcass fell to the ground. Then the man extended his hand, trying to get the botanist to accept his invitation. Days later, the local news reported 4 horrendous murder victims, all 4 young botany students, found in their respective homes, foaming at the mouth and eyes bulging from their sockets from the pressure. All the neighbors wondered if that beast from the forest had gotten tired of killing animals and had started killing humans. It was all hypotheses, no one had proof. The elders began to spread a rumor that they had seen a strange woman in the forest, wearing a brown dress, a mask without a mouth, and strange branches on her head in the shape of horns. If that wasn't strange enough, they also attributed powers to control plants. But it was probably just meaningless gossip from people whose imagination had played tricks on them. As for Jennifer's parents, they sent a search and rescue team, but still had no news. Day after day, they mourned the disappearance of their daughter. They didn't lose hope because the police never found a body. In the city, it is rumored that you can still hear the crying of the forest, the crying and screaming of Jennifer Rhines. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!